talk about day two of the Kouri Richins murder trial. So, if you are unfamiliar with this case, Kouri Richins is a woman who lives in Camas, Utah, which is just outside of Salt Lake City. She's 35 years old, and she stands trial accused of poisoning her husband with a lethal dose of fentanyl. It's been close to 3 years in pretrial hearings and motions, and so now here we are on day two of this trial. So, Nathan, once again, thank you very much for taking some time with us.
Happy to be here.
Okay, so on day two, what would be your big takeaways? It seems like that there was a lot of expert testimony. About 8 people took the stand. We heard from first responders. We heard from deputies with the sheriff's office that responded. We also heard from the medical examiner who did the autopsy report testify today. So what is your big takeaway from day two of this trial?
I think a good way to judge a trial and the day of a trial is to see what kind of significant evidence came in that a jury is for sure going to be looking at. And I think 2 really big pieces of evidence came in. The biggest, I would say, is that first responding video from Officer Wynn. I would love to be a fly in the wall with that jury to see how they interpret that, because Officer Wynn, towards the end of his testimony, certainly had his opinion that it was a bit strange, that Ms. Richards was hiding her face, that it wasn't a typical kind of victim or victim family member at a scene like that he had seen before. Usually they're much more verklempt or much more emotional or much more crying or much more being unable to do that. Then you look at that video and you can kind of see what he's saying. But then again, the defense was also making the point that, has he ever seen Ms. Richards before? Has he ever seen her grieve before? And that, can this just be something that's kind of a nuance? So, Jim, I think in looking at that, that's going to be really interesting, because as compared to a lot of different things that like really testimonial, juries like to cut through evidence and get to the raw data, get to the raw, unencumbered kind of video. And in that case, there's nobody saying that it was tainted, that she was nothing. It's just raw and real and present, and it's just minutes after the 911 phone call. So that is going to be so interesting to see how they view that. And without a doubt, they will. And then you're going to have 12 of them looking at that, giving their opinions, bringing their own common sense and their own human experience to that. So it's really interesting. It's very compelling video, because there's nothing about it that draws into question like it's not authentic. It is what it is. And then the second thing would be the autopsy.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So then you had the medical examiner that testified today, and some really good things for the prosecution, some good things for the defense that I'm happy to talk about.
So, with respect to the video, for those that maybe didn't see it, you alluded to it real briefly here, but this is a body cam video from one of the deputies that arrived on the scene. This was just shortly after this 911 call was made by Kouri saying that her husband wasn't moving. And so it starts to show the very, very first moments, at least that we see visually as the public and that the jury is now seeing, of what deputies saw responding to that scene. Why is that so important for the state's case?
Oh, it's critically important. And it's interesting, Jim, you and I have been following this case for years, and now we're finally seeing evidence that the prosecution, the defense have had the entire time. But it's a window in time. It's real-time data. It's real-time video, and you're able to kind of see what's being said, compare that to statements later, and you're using your human intuition to think, okay, well, the prosecution is saying that this was staged, that this was poison, that she's making this up, she's being a great actress, and does this look like someone that's acting, or does this look like someone that is actually mourning? And both sides probably have their own points of supporting their claim, like, no, this was authentic, or no, this was completely staged, that this is just a complete act. And then you have 12 jurors that will come in and view that. They will watch that video. That will be one of the critical things that I'm sure will be one of the first things that they will do. Is because throughout the remainder of this trial, they're going to go through bank records and all this stuff, but that is raw, Jim. That is just in real time. And then you have like all of these eyeballs on this one video to kind of parse that out and to see like, oh, this is what was said later in the trial. So it's something that when it's not questioned, and in this case it's not, it's real, it's a body camera video that's about right here on Officer Wynn, And thankfully they have that because it's really good evidence to have. Um, but it's quite compelling. I found that to be incredibly compelling.
So when you're talking about raw footage, there's raw emotion involved. The deputy was testifying about what he felt Kouri's demeanor was in that moment. So if the state is laying that out as part of their case, how does the defense rebuttal that?
Well, there are going to be parts in that video where she is really crying and upset, and is in her, I mean, in a very emotional state. And they'll say, "Well, what do you expect?" I mean, and they were kind of rebutting that somewhat through their cross-examination, saying, "You don't know her. How can anyone really judge what is a normal, typical thing?" Sure, Officer Wynn's been to other death scenes, and people typically might respond in a certain way, but that doesn't mean that she would in this case. But on the other hand, the prosecution is going to say, well, if you wanted somebody that really staged this, that planted this, that poison, what would a typical response for someone that would do that be? Covering their face, hiding their face, putting their hands down like this. And so that, I mean, that's quite compelling too. So it's something where, as you will see through the course of the trial, you're going to have a lot of opinions, a lot of verbal testimony, which all testimony is, of course, is all verbal, and a lot of different things, and what people thought and what the motives might be, and why someone might say this, and your statement is different from before. But in that case, that's raw. I mean, that is real. And I found it to be very, 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 very compelling.
So, another big piece of today's testimony centered around the pathologist and the doctor that performed the autopsy on Eric Richins. And the questions started to surface. How did the fentanyl actually get into Eric's body? That has got to be a pivotal piece of this entire case. So the pathologist was answering questions about, based on her examination, was it orally ingested? Was it injected? Trying to narrow that down. She went on to say that Eric did not have a history of illicit drug use or prescription drug use. So she said the fentanyl should have been zero, and that there was really no evidence of injury. What are we to make of that testimony?
Yeah, there's nothing clear that this was an injection that way. And so it kind of leaves you just with a couple of different options. I found the Dr. Ulmer to be very, very sharp. I've known her for a long time. She is quite sharp. I think she's very, very credible. And one of the big things with that is that, and this is something that the defense said in their opening, this was a big thing for the defense that happened today, is just that usually a medical examiner weighs on the opinion, was this homicide? Homicide being you were killed by a person, suicide, killed yourself, or unknown. And at this moment in time, there's no ruling on that. And that's what Dr. Ulmer said, like, we just don't have the information available to us. And that's something that was important to the defense at the beginning, an opening statement. And you can see that that would be an important argument for them going forward too.
And so we didn't really find out, at least to my knowledge, of exactly, like, I don't know if that question was answered today, exactly how the fentanyl got into Eric's body, but isn't that really one of the key pieces of this entire thing?
Yes, 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 it is. I mean, but I don't think anything was excluded today either. I mean, the state's theory is going to be that it was in a drink and that it was swallowed, and that's where the fentanyl was. I don't think that there was anything that happened today that excluded that possibility either. There, I do. Experts and all witnesses can only testify about what they really know. And if they just don't know how it was ingested, how it was taken in, they're not going to say how it was. Now, they're also not going to rule out possibilities that are not possible either. So what we do know, and this is where it's going to come down to like how the jury's going to see this, is that no one's really contesting that he died of fentanyl. So on the one hand. On the other hand, as you rightly bring up, how did it get in his body? And
Yeah.
that's a good thing for the defense to actually kind of hang their hat on, because they're going to say that's a reasonable doubt. Like, we don't know how this all happened, and all that came out today.
And speaking of the defense, I want to talk about level of detail. How do juries respond to such specific level of detail? Because we're talking about things that came out in day two, like Richins' attorneys were focusing on what may have been missed during the examination, pointing out areas of the body that the body cameras didn't show, things like that. They asked if the responders looked on top of the cabinet with medicine in it, checked trash cans, other areas of the home, tested for white specks. Did they test? That could have been on Eric's nightstand. What's the strategy there? I mean, they're getting into pretty specific levels of detail here.
Yeah. The strategy is going to be there was a lack of an investigation or of a lack of a thorough investigation that they could have found the fentanyl, but they just didn't look for it. Or there was a way to ingest this fentanyl, but they just didn't see it. Had it been more thorough, had it been more heavily supervised, that these questions really could have been answered. But because they really thought it was, a poisoning, that everything else was blinded to the investigators. That was the pathway that they took. They didn't open their eyes to other possibilities in terms of the investigation. Ladies and gentlemen, that's a reasonable doubt. Find her not guilty. Find her not guilty. So that would be the strategy there.
So when we talk about, 8 different people testified today, these experts are called to testify. It's really setting up a story. Yeah. Again, I ask, kind of going back to you've worn both hats on both sides of trials like this. How common is it for juries to hear all of this expert testimony just right out of the gate? And are both sides just trying to build the beginning of that story?
Yes, it's really fascinating. I think it's well done with what the prosecution is doing. They're saying there was a death, there was a scene there in March 2022. Oh, whoa. Sorry about that. It looks like balloons
No
are kind of
worries.
coming up. I guess I can't do hand signals on this. So
no worries.
So what they're doing right now is they're saying there was a death, there was a scene, there was a video from that. There was also a video taken from like the entire house. There was an autopsy. There was all of these things, and that's what's there. And now eventually they're going to turn towards motive. Like, okay, this is what we know. He did die. He did die of fentanyl overdose. There was a video. There was an investigation of all this. But now we're trying to say why she would do this, and eventually it's going to turn towards that. And so right now it's the expert. It's the expert place. It's the medical examiner. It's the toxicologist. It's the cops coming over. It's the investigators doing these things, just setting this up because eventually they really have a big question that the jury is going to be wondering. Why would anyone kill her husband?
And I'll ask you this throughout the entirety of this, but jurors, they have to remember a lot of information. There's going to be so much information coming at them over the next 5 weeks. I know we're early on, but as attorneys, do you feel like you hope that the jury is remembering everything from today and everything from yesterday, or maybe there's some strategy later in the trial to kind of wrap everything up? I know there's closing arguments, but do you think of it as a day-by-day progression? Boy, I hope they really absorbed everything today and everything yesterday as well.
Yes, and there's also the recognition that they're just human, and to recall every detail, every witness, every little fact is going to be interesting. It's impossible to do that. They all have notebooks. We haven't seen the jury, as we shouldn't, but I guarantee they all have notebooks and they all have pages and pages of notes. And that's where it goes back to the beginning. This substantiates what I was telling you before. That's why that raw video at the beginning is going to be so crucial, because beyond their notes, beyond the recollection, beyond what this person testified, they want to see that raw video to kind of see this is what it was. And beyond the interpretation of attorneys and arguments and all those things, they want to see what that really was and come to their own conclusions on that. So they're laying out the table. The juries know that, hey, this person kind of was doing this part and this one did this part. They'll parse what they feel is going to be really critical and important, and they'll kind of get through what they feel like isn't so important.
All right, last word. Anything that I missed or that really stood out to you that you think is important to know?
It's interesting. You're beginning to see the attorneys flare on both sides, and you kind of sense the frustrations a bit. So a little bit of that theater in the courtroom is always kind of interesting. So I'm sure that's for anyone that's been paying attention to that. I just wanted to make note of that. I've seen that too, but fascinating. It's well done by everybody, I think, on day 2, including the judge.
All right. Well, Nathan Evershed, once again, thank you very much for taking some time to break this down and add some extra context here on day 2 of the trial for Kouri Richins, who, again, is a woman from Camas, Utah, who is standing trial right now, accused of poisoning and killing her husband with a lethal dose of fentanyl. So day 2 has wrapped up. We will see all of you again here tomorrow, and Nathan will see you here again tomorrow as well. In the meantime, you want to go ahead and subscribe and like our YouTube page. Make sure that you'll get notifications whenever we come on and do these YouTube lives. We will be here after every day of the trial. So Nathan, thank you very much again for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jim.
All right. Well, we are all set. We're clear. Thanks again so much.
New microphone.
So appreciative. All right. No, that was on our side. We tweaked a lot of our settings.
Oh.
So I'm fingers crossed. We had an engineer standing by, so I think we were getting the thumbs up that it's a lot better today than it was yesterday.
Awesome. Awesome. Good.
Yeah.
Good. Good to see you, Jim.
All right. Thanks again.
See you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah, it looked way better on the stream.
Oh, good.
Way better.
Good. Okay.
I didn't realize it could look like that.
Okay. So
The balloons was so funny.
I
Oh,
did
you
hit record.
Nice.
I hit start record. So
Yeah, it should be in the